Julian Assange has been freed on bail, having now walked away from a prison here in the United Kingdom. As we speak, he's on a flight with the intention to return back home to Australia. The WikiLeaks founder struck a deal with the US which allows him to avoid further espionage charges in America. He spent 5 years in prison and before that 7 years taking refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy here in London. His legal woes started when in 2010 WikiLeaks published 700,000 secret documents, the largest ever breach of its kind. The US had argued that the leak endangered American lives. Australian MP Monique Ryan welcomed the release deal. She was involved in a cross-party campaign seeking Mr. Assange's freedom.
It's a source of significant relief to millions of Australians that we understand today that there's been significant progress on the case of Julian Assange. We don't have, at this point, confirmation of exactly where things are. We know that things are underway in terms of ongoing legal proceedings, but millions of Australians want him home. We've felt concern for his welfare for many years, and it's the news that his release or these proceedings, there's been significant progress on them, has been very warmly welcomed in this country.
Well, one of his closest supporters over the years has been legal observer Deepa Driver. She's attended most of Julian Assange's hearings for the past 5 years and is joining us now live. Hello and welcome to the program. I wonder, we just heard there from an Australian MP who said that this was significant relief for all Australians. But as you've been a supporter, strong supporter over the years, I wonder, what was your reaction when you found out?
Thank you very much for having me on. I'd like to start by saying this is a historic moment because what has happened through this plea bargain is that Julian's, not just his immediate family, but his global family in the form of support groups all over the world, have achieved a victory for ordinary people. And that victory is a victory for democracy, for human rights, and for press freedom, because he has been denied his liberty in one way or another, as your colleagues explained, for over 14 years. And in this time, what we've had is a non-US citizen publishing outside the US information about American war crimes has been hounded, smeared, vilified, and jailed by Britain on the US's behest. And that's disgusting behavior. But what's also disgusting is the revelation of what our court system is like, in that our courts have not really taken a stance against the illegal spying on the privileged legal conversations between a defendant and his lawyer, that is Julian Assange, and people like Gareth Peirce. Our courts have not taken a stance against the fact that an extraditing state, which is a criminal state, has sought to assassinate a defendant. And our courts have not really taken a stand in favor of open justice. And for us, that's really, there's been a lot of information that came out through Julian's releases and WikiLeaks' work. But what's really been quite eye-opening for most people is the way this case has unfolded. And so you asked me how I felt. I think there is a mixture of relief for his family, of course, and as an external observer who doesn't have any particularly close relationship with him, there is a sense of gratitude for justice in some ways, but also a recognition that he's had to take a plea bargain in order not to die in prison.
I wonder though, if some might say that the fact that he released 700,000 documents that he had gotten through an American soldier, the fact that the American said that he had not looked through them, he did not know the names of the people on it, whether they were American soldiers on the ground in Iraq and Afghanistan, or if even the people in themselves in those countries, in their point that he was putting those lives at risk.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me start by saying it is very easy to pretend that you're putting somebody's lives at risk. If the Americans had known of even one single case where WikiLeaks publications has endangered somebody, you would have assumed that in 14 years those would have come out. They didn't come out in the Manning hearings, and they certainly didn't come out in the Assange extradition hearings. What we did have clear and repeated and systematic evidence of is repeated war crimes, not risk, but the crystallization of risk, the deaths of millions of people, the torturing of 780 Muslim men and boys as young as 14 at Guantanamo, the information that the United States undermines the sovereign democratic processes in other countries, and through that, the recognition that Britain has been complicit in this. So I'd like, to push back and say, actually, this idea that, oh, he didn't know who the people were, redactions did take place. In fact, Julian, there is evidence from the mainstream media, from sources across the world who have given evidence at the hearing that redactions did take place, that this was not a dump. That is a typical smear that the United States has managed to plant in many minds. And actually, what WikiLeaks did was an important public service, because they didn't do it for money. They did it because the public deserves to know the crimes that are taking place in our name across the world.
And let's now look ahead. He's now still got one more court appearance in the Mariana Islands. What is the time frame? What do you know?
My understanding is he left on a flight yesterday evening at about 5 p.m. UK. I believe there will be a stop en route, which is at the furthest outpost of the US, where you can see the US global empire. And this will be quite close to Australia then, and then he will reach home.
All right.
So my understanding is that that deal has been agreed. The documents have been now published. And I'm glad to say that I hope he will be able to recover from the torture he experienced, as the UN Special Rapporteur on Torture has found. I hope that he will get compensation for the crimes that have been committed against him. And I hope that we as people who have woken up through this struggle will come together to continue to demand democracy, human rights, and press freedom. Freedom for people like you to do the right thing.
Deepa Driver, thank you so very much for your time. A legal observer there talking to us about Julian Assange and that plea deal that he signed with the United States.